The trend towards this theory of money, which may be characterized as transcendental by contrast with the materialistic theory, began with the views of Adam Smith. While materialism asserts that mind is matter, the transcendental philosophy teaches that matter itself is mind. This does not refer to mind in the spiritualist sense, as a substance, an autonomous being, although of an immaterial kind, but to the knowledge that any object, whether physical or mental, exists for us only in so far as it is conceived by the active process of the mind, or more precisely, in so far as it is a function of the mind. If the materialistic interpretation of money now appears to be an error, historical analysis shows that this error was not accidental but was the appropriate theoretical expression of an actual sociological condition, which had first to be overcome by the real forces before its theoretical counterpart could be overcome in theory. Social interaction and exchange relations, money's functions. There is a further context in which the sociological character of money appears. The interaction between individuals is the starting point of all social formations. The real historical origins of social life are still obscure, but whatever they were, a systematic genetic analysis must begin from this most simple and immediate relationship, which even today is the source of innumerable new social formations. Further development replaces the immediacy of interacting forces with the creation of higher superindividual formations, which appear as independent representatives of these forces and absorb and mediate the relations between individuals. These formations exist in great variety, as tangible realities and as mere ideas and products of the imagination, as complex organizations and as individual existences. In this way, the objective laws of custom, law, and morality developed from the necessities and practices, which originate incidentally in the relations between group members and which eventually become fixed. They are ideal products of human conceptions and valuation, which in our mind now stand beyond the will and action of the individual as pure forms. Thus, in the continuation of this process, the law of the state is embodied in the judges and the whole administrative hierarchy. The cohesive power of a political party lies in its executive committee and its parliamentary representatives. The unity of a regiment is incarnated in its flag, and that of a mystical union rests in its holy grail, etc. The interactions between the primary elements that produce the social unit are replaced by the fact that each of these elements establishes an independent relation to a higher or intermediate organ. Money belongs to this category of reified social functions. The function of exchange, as a direct interaction between individuals, becomes crystallized in the form of money as an independent structure. The exchange of the products of labor, or of any other possessions, is obviously one of the purest and most primitive forms of human socialization, not in the sense that society already existed and then brought about acts of exchange, but, on the contrary, that exchange is one of the functions that creates an inner bond between men, a society, in place of a mere collection of individuals. Society is not an absolute entity which must first exist so that all the individual relations of its members, and subordination, cohesion, imitation, division of labor, exchange, common attack and defense, religious community, party formations and many others, can develop within its framework or be represented by it. It is only the synthesis or the general term for the totality of these specific interactions. Any one of the interactions may, of course, be eliminated and society still exist, but only if a sufficiently large number of others remain intact. If all interaction ceases, there is no longer any society. In the same way, a living organism can continue to exist if one or the other of its functions, which is an interaction between parts, ceases, but it cannot live if all functions cease, because life is nothing but the sum of interacting forces among the atoms of the organism. It is, therefore, almost a tautology to say that exchange brings about socialization, for exchange is a form of socialization. It is one of those relations through which a number of individuals become a social group, and society is identical with the sum total of these relations. The frequently emphasized inconveniences and deficiencies of barter are comparable with those that appear in other social interactions when they are still in the stage of immediacy. If all governmental measures have to be discussed and approved by the whole body of citizens, if the defense of the group against external enemies is still assured by military service for all its members, if collective effort and organization depends entirely upon personal authority and force, if the administration of justice requires the verdict of the whole community, if all these things are necessary, then the growing size and complexity of the group will produce all those inadequacies, hindrances, and breakdowns that eventually suggest, on one hand, the transfer of these functions to specific organs and, on the other hand, the creation of representative and integrating ideals and symbols. The function of exchange leads in fact to both kinds of structure, to a class of merchants and to money. The merchant is the differentiated representative of the exchange functions, which otherwise are carried out directly by the producers. Instead of the simple interaction between producers, a new relationship of each of them to the merchant is established, just as the direct cohesion and control of the group members is replaced by their common relation to the organs of government. Anticipating a more exact knowledge, one may say that money stands between the objects of exchange as the merchant stands between the exchanging subjects. The equivalence between objects of exchange is no longer affected directly, and its fluctuations are no longer concealed. Instead, each object acquires a relationship of equivalence and exchange with money. The merchant is the personified function of exchange, and money is the reified function of being exchanged. Money is, as I noted earlier, the reification of the pure relationship between things as expressed in their economic motion. Money stands beyond the individual objects that are related to it, in a realm organized according to its own norms, which is the objectification of the movements of balancing and exchange originally accomplished by the objects themselves. However, this is only a preliminary view. For, in the last analysis, it is not the objects, but the people who carry on these processes, and the relations between the objects are really relations between people. The activity of exchange among individuals is represented by money in a concrete, independent, and, as it were, congealed form in the same sense as government represents the reciprocal self-regulation of the members of a community, as the Palladium or the Ark of the Covenant represents the cohesion of the group, or the military order represents its self-defense. All these are instances of a general type, in which a specific feature becomes detached from the primary phenomena, substances, or events to which it was bound in the same way that a quality is bound to its substance or action to its subject. This feature then assumes a structure of its own, and the process of abstraction is brought to a conclusion when it crystallizes in a concrete formation. Outside exchange, money has as little meaning as have regiments and flags outside the needs of communal attack and defense, or as have priests and temples independently of communal religiosity. The dual nature of money, as a concrete and valued substance and, at the same time, as something that owes its significance to the complete dissolution of substance into motion and function, derives from the fact that money is the reification of exchange among people, the embodiment of a pure function.